Hello all. Welcome to the channel, 6-Path Weeb in the building. Today's fanfic journey dives deep into an epic transformation. Naruko, from ninja to cosmic sage, a tale where power meets purpose, and destiny goes beyond the stars. Disclaimer. This content is for entertainment and discussion only. I do not own any anime footage used in this video. All rights and credits go to their rightful creators and copyright holders. Let's get into it, guys. Buckle up, this one's going to be epic. A not-so-average discovery. Today seemed like a typical day in the Hidden Leaf Village, also known as Konoha. The sun was high in the sky, the weather was pleasantly warm, and the streets bustled with familiar routines. Everyone, from the youngest academy students to the vigilant Onbu and even the Hokage, was going about their day as usual. That is, everyone except for one person, Naruko Uzumaki. Naruko, a spirited and energetic 6-year-old, had stumbled upon something quite unexpected while evading a group of chunin who were playfully trying to catch her after one of her usual mischievous escapades. Of course, they weren't truly trying to punish her, just playing along to make it feel convincing. Not that Naruko needed to know that. While darting through alleyways and back paths, the ground suddenly gave way beneath her, dropping her into a hidden, ancient chamber. Whoa! This place is so dusty. And huge, Naruko whispered in awe, brushing dirt off her bright orange hoodie. The chamber, despite having no obvious light source, seemed to glow faintly, revealing walls lined with shelves full of scrolls and books. Maybe there's a super ancient technique in here that can help me become Hokage, she said excitedly, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. She began browsing the collection, her attention soon drawn to a particularly aged book titled Cosmic Energy. Intrigued, Naruko plopped down on the cold stone floor, opened the book, and began to read. To her delight, the book had illustrations and a simple enough explanation that even someone with her limited reading experience could understand. Hours passed unnoticed as Naruko pored over the book, fully absorbed in its strange and exciting teachings. When she finally closed it, she raised her hands triumphantly. I did it. I read the whole thing. She cheered. Now, how do I get out of here? She set her backpack on the ground and pulled out a cup of ramen. After happily finishing her meal in record time, Naruko wandered the archive, looking for an exit. But since she had fallen in from above, there was no clear way out. Remembering something she read in the book about meditation bringing clarity, she sat down and closed her eyes. Time seemed to blur. 12 hours, or maybe more, passed while Naruko meditated. During this deep focus, she found herself surrounded by a strange, calming sensation. The cosmic energy described in the book was beginning to resonate with her. Unlike anything she'd felt before, it quieted her mind and even seemed to pause her need for food, water, or rest. Didn't Gramps mention that meditation helps with spiritual energy? She thought. But the book said cosmic energy is even more powerful. Like a substitute for both spirit and physical energy. As Naruko gathered more and more of this mysterious energy, it eventually overwhelmed her. Unable to control it, she fainted, releasing a brilliant surge of cosmic energy that shimmered and danced like a living rainbow across the ancient chamber. Inside Naruko's mindscape. When Naruko opened her eyes, she found herself in a strange, tunnel-like space that resembled a giant underground corridor. Huh? I was just in a library. Where am I now? She muttered, standing up and looking around. Maybe this is a dream? Doesn't matter. When I get out of here, I'm gonna show everyone what I learned. Excited and full of energy, she started running down the corridor. And when they ask how I did it, I'll say, that's for me to know and for you to guess. She giggled, completely caught up in her imagination. Naruko didn't notice what lay ahead until, thud. She bumped into something solid. Rubbing her forehead, she looked up and gasped. In front of her stood a massive iron gate. Behind it, gazing back at her with piercing eyes, was a giant fox-like creature with 9 flowing tails. Her eyes widened in amazement. Whoa! What are you? She whispered, captivated by the powerful presence behind the bars. The giant fox gazed down at Naruko for what felt like forever, studying her, evaluating her, almost like it was trying to peer into her very spirit. Naruko stood frozen in place, knees trembling, doing her best to stay calm under the intense stare of the enormous creature's glowing red eyes. Do you know why you're here? The fox asked, its voice deep yet surprisingly calm, echoing throughout the surreal landscape of Naruko's mind. And no. Naruko replied nervously, her voice unsteady. You are here because of cosmic energy, the fox began, its tone filled with ancient wisdom. The previous hosts before you attempted to use it in different ways. One channeled positive cosmic energy, which weakened me. Another used negative energy, which only made me stronger. But you used pure cosmic energy. That's why I'm even speaking with you. The way the fox spoke carried a neutral tone, but if one listened closely, there was the faintest hint of something gentler. That's amazing, Naruko said, excitedly. Does that mean I can control cosmic energy? Not exactly, the fox corrected patiently. What it means is that by having cosmic energy within you, it influences me to cooperate with you. That's the only reason I'm sharing this knowledge. Oh. But who are you exactly? Naruko asked, her curiosity outweighing her nerves. The fox sighed, without actually sighing. I am the nine-tailed fox. But I always heard the fourth Hokage defeated you, Naruko said, feeling confused and a bit unsettled. No, the fourth Hokage sealed me within you, the fox explained plainly. While the fox was not hostile toward Naruko, it didn't necessarily feel emotionally invested either. Why me? Naruko asked, her voice soft with the weight of emotion. It had something to do with you being a newborn. Your chakra pathways hadn't fully developed yet, the fox answered matter-of-factly. Honestly, it had overheard the details from Minato, but didn't pay close attention at the time. So, the fourth chose me. To keep you sealed and protect the village? Naruko asked, starting to put the pieces together in her mind. That's more or less accurate, the fox responded, its attention already drifting to more pressing topics. That is incredible. Naruko grinned, proud of the idea that she played such a major role in something important, even if she didn't fully understand all the implications just yet. Yes. If you say so. Anyway, moving on, there's something else you should know. You also have a powerful dragon sealed within you. Wait, what? Naruko exclaimed, blinking in disbelief. I'm serious. You have a red dragon sealed inside you, the fox stated, as casually as if it were talking about the weather. That sounds pretty cool, Naruko said, half wondering if it was a good thing. Yes, it's definitely something unique. But it works differently than I do, the fox clarified, though it suspected Naruko wouldn't focus on the fine print. Okay, sure, Naruko shrugged, more excited by the idea than the explanation. There are a few more things I should explain before we get into the details of cosmic energy, the fox said in a flat voice, hoping Naruko wouldn't tune out. Let's stick with the cosmic energy part, Naruko replied quickly, the fox's tone having the intended effect. Alright. First, cosmic energy is a more advanced version of chakra. It doesn't work in exactly the same way, it replaces your physical and spiritual energy to form a much stronger energy. You can use it to boost your physical strength, mental focus, and general abilities, the fox explained, falling into a long, detailed explanation. Naruko was trying to keep up, but her attention was already drifting. She cared, she really did, but sometimes it was hard to focus on long lectures. Did you get all that? The fox asked eventually. Naruko didn't know how to answer truthfully. You didn't understand any of it, did you? The fox replied dryly. That would be correct, Naruko admitted, somehow managing to use a word she didn't even remember learning. Let me put it simply, cosmic energy helps create better chakra and enhances your natural abilities. Got it? Yup. It can also improve your intelligence if you use it properly. It may even allow you to borrow abilities from other realms, the fox continued, now that Naruko was finally paying attention. 6 years had passed since Naruko Uzumaki first discovered the village library. It was the final week at the Ninja Academy, and every student sat quietly at their desks, intently focused on the written portion of their final exam. Except for two individuals. Shikamaru Nara, always one to live up to his clan's easygoing nature, was dozing peacefully at his desk. Meanwhile, Naruko Uzumaki, wearing her signature black-tinted goggles, had been calmly meditating for the past 25 minutes. It was difficult to tell if she was resting or simply gathering her thoughts. Both students had completed the test shortly after it began, about 5 minutes in, while the rest of the class had now spent nearly 30. The silence in the room was occasionally broken by the soft snoring from Shikamaru and the quiet muttering of a nervous Kiba Inuzuka. After another 10 minutes, the last students finally finished their exams. Relief spread across most faces, though some still looked worried, except for Sasuke Uchiha, who maintained his usual composed, and slightly proud, demeanor. Alright. The written exam is complete. Now we'll begin the physical assessment, announced Iruka-sensei, his voice bright and energetic. Shikamaru stirred awake with a quiet groan, while Naruko stopped meditating and straightened up, hands folded over her desk, attentively waiting for further instructions. She sat alone, as always, but with an air of calm focus. "Let's move outside for the sparring portion of the test," Iruka called out, and the class eagerly followed him to the training yard. Naruko was the first to exit the classroom. She walked with quiet confidence and gracefully jumped into a nearby tree, perching on a branch and briefly resuming a relaxed meditative pose. Iruka addressed the class again. "Remember the rules: no tools, no companions, and no ninjutsu. This is to test your taijutsu only. First matches between." Naruko tuned out the rest of the announcement. She had learned how to focus her attention inward through meditation, tuning out unnecessary distractions. She still observed the matches, but only on a physical level, letting the rhythm of each movement guide her understanding of each student's technique. After several matches, some exciting, others rather clumsy, Iruka's voice broke through her thoughts. "Naruko Uzumaki." Naruko opened her eyes, adjusted her goggles, and effortlessly jumped from the branch, landing gracefully in the training circle. Her opponent was none other than Sasuke Uchiha. "So, it's you," she said softly, more to herself than to Sasuke. A small smile formed on her lips. She didn't take a fighting stance. She stood casually, yet with perfect balance, her presence calm but unmistakably confident. Sasuke, by contrast, quickly fell into his family's traditional stance, focused and serious. Though he didn't have his clan's famed dojutsu, he was still determined to prove his strength. "Are both students ready?" Iruka asked. Naruko gave a small nod, while Sasuke remained silent but ready. "Begin," Iruka declared, stepping back to give them space. For a moment, neither moved. Then Sasuke lunged forward, aiming a precise punch at Naruko's head. She calmly raised a hand and redirected his fist to the side. He immediately followed up with a spinning kick, but Naruko caught his leg mid-air, maintaining her composed expression. With effortless strength and control, she lifted him slightly and gently flipped him through the air. As he descended, Naruko met him with a well-timed palm strike to the chest, breaking his momentum and guiding him safely to the ground. Sasuke rolled onto his back, stunned more by the ease of her technique than the impact itself. Naruko stepped beside him and rested her foot lightly against his chest, signaling the end of the match. There was a brief moment of silence. "That was quick," Shikamaru commented, raising an eyebrow. "Winner, Naruko Uzumaki," Iruka announced, though it was already clear to everyone. Naruko returned to her spot in the tree, one leg dangling over the edge as she watched the rest of the matches. She no longer meditated, she simply observed quietly, her thoughts focused. When the physical test concluded, the class was brought back inside for the final round, assessments in Genjutsu and Ninjutsu. Students were called into the evaluation room one by one in alphabetical order. Just as Iruka was about to call Naruko's name, a knock came at the door. 4 Anbu operatives entered, accompanied by Kakashi Hatake. "We'll be administering Naruko Uzumaki's final test today," Kakashi said politely, his tone calm and formal. "This is a special request, for classified reasons." Iruka blinked in surprise but nodded. "All right. Naruko, please go with them." Before he could finish, Naruko was already at the door, standing beside the masked ninja with a quiet sense of readiness. The group exited without another word. Their departure stirred a wave of whispers and speculation among the remaining students. Some were confused, others envious. Sasuke, in particular, looked displeased. He couldn't help but feel frustrated that Naruko seemed to receive special attention he believed he deserved. The Anbu led Naruko to the Hokage's office, where the third Hokage was waiting, along with Kakashi and the masked operatives. "All right, Naruko," the Hokage said with a kind but firm voice. "Please show us your abilities." Kakashi and the Anbu quickly activated a series of seals, shielding the room from outside detection, ensuring that what was about to happen would remain completely confidential. Naruko lifted her goggles, revealing her eyes. The room grew still. The energy in her gaze was powerful, calm, yet commanding. Those present, even the seasoned Anbu, recognized the strength and potential within her. It wasn't fear she inspired, but awe. The very next day at the academy, Naruko was, as usual, calmly meditating at what used to be her desk, now just a reminder of how much things had changed. Her outfit remained mostly the same, with the exception of a crimson-purple shirt and a sleek trench coat added to her style. Around her neck, she wore a void black headband, a quiet symbol of her evolving journey. Meanwhile, Sasuke was struggling to stay composed. Not knowing what the day's test would be had him visibly on edge. What made it worse was that Naruko had been quietly ignoring him for the past 2 hours. Their sensei, as usual, was running exceptionally late. When their teacher finally arrived, Naruko stood and approached him. His face was mostly hidden behind a mask, and his silver hair defied gravity as always. "Sorry I'm late, everyone. I had to take a different route today, ran into some unexpected detours," he explained casually. Everyone, including Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruko, had a visible reaction of disbelief, except for Naruko, who remained calm and unbothered. "All right, meet me on the roof. It's too quiet and dull in here." With that, he vanished in a puff of smoke. Without hesitation, Naruko also disappeared swiftly and silently, leaving Sasuke and Sakura to take the stairs up to the rooftop. Naruko was quietly waiting for the others with Kakashi, as usual, meditating. Kakashi, however, was not quite as relaxed. His calm exterior didn't reveal the deep thoughts he was contemplating, thankfully. Kakashi often felt a bit less confident as a ninja in Naruko's presence. All because Naruko's neutral expression was far better than his own, despite Kakashi wearing a mask. His goggles left little to the imagination, but they still didn't give a clue to what was behind them, which often made him curious. His face resembled an Anbu mask, emotionless, leaving anyone who looked at him guessing about what was going on in his mind. Perhaps it was some form of jutsu or an extraordinary skill. But the strange thing was, Kakashi could sense the raw, uncontrolled chakra behind those goggles, especially because he had witnessed those intense eyes himself. It was then that Kakashi noticed the other two Genin approaching. Finally, I won't be left alone to speculate about Naruko, Kakashi thought in relief. He might have to ask around later to see if others felt the same way he did about the mystery that was Naruko. "We'll start with introductions," Kakashi announced to the three Genin in a calm, somewhat disinterested tone. "Why don't you go first, Sensei, and show us how it's done?" Sakura asked, trying to act innocent, even though everyone could see she was hoping to impress Sasuke. Sakura. I can't believe she doesn't realize what she's doing, Sasuke thought, feeling some annoyance. "All right. My name is Kakashi Hatake. I like certain things, and I dislike others. My dream is to achieve a personal goal," Kakashi said, not revealing much, as usual. Sasuke facepalmed, unable to believe what he had just heard, while Sakura looked shocked. "Okay, Pinky, your turn," Kakashi said, unbothered by the nickname. Sakura looked a bit offended by the name, but at least he hadn't called her by her other, less flattering nickname. "My name's Sakura Haruno. I like Sasuke, and I dislike anything to do with Naruko. My dream is to marry Sasuke someday," Sakura said, her words showing her obvious feelings. The truth was clear to everyone, except for Naruko, who didn't seem to care either way. "Your new nickname is Fangirl. Scowl face, you're next," Kakashi said, pushing Sasuke into his turn with ease. "My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I like proving that I'm better than others," Sasuke said in a somewhat arrogant tone, which made Kakashi cringe. "I dislike being underestimated, and my goal is to defeat and take revenge on two specific people." Kakashi winced at the thought of having such a focused, serious person on the team. "Okay, Avenger. Now, Naruko, your turn," Kakashi began but froze when Naruko met his gaze. Naruko looked up slowly, as if considering what to share. Kakashi felt an intense shift in the air, as if a heavy presence had fallen over the area. He was momentarily unnerved by the aura coming from Naruko. "My name is Naruko Uzumaki. I like a variety of things, including stealth and strategy. I dislike many things, but my goal is to be the best I can be and to continue growing stronger," Naruko said simply. Sakura and Sasuke both seemed surprised by Naruko's calm demeanor, though Sasuke was better at hiding it. That concludes introductions. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp, we have a special test. Don't eat breakfast, or you'll feel sick. Got it? Good. See you then, Kakashi said before vanishing in a puff of smoke, not bothering to stick around for questions. Naruko nodded and quietly walked away, leaving the other two to continue their conversations. When Naruko got home to the hidden Namikaze estate, she spent some time refining her techniques, ensuring everything was in order before continuing with her usual routine. The next day, 7 a.m. Naruko arrived an hour earlier than everyone else, as she had woken up at 4 a.m. and had nothing else to do, even after having 2 breakfasts. As usual, Naruko settled into her usual spot in the tree to meditate. After a while, she sensed the approach of her teammates and another presence nearby, trying to remain unnoticed. She remained still, waiting for the right moment. As the presence got closer, around noon, Naruko dropped down from the tree, startling Sakura but not Sasuke. Almost immediately, Kakashi appeared before them. "Alright, I'm going to administer a survival test," Kakashi said, pulling out 2 bells and setting a timer on one of 3 stumps behind him. "Whoever gets a bell wins and gets lunch. And yes, Sakura, I know there are only 2 bells. Whoever doesn't get one will be sent back to the academy." He returned the bells to his belt loop. "Come at me with the intent to win," Kakashi said, unaware of the pressure he was about to put himself under. Immediately, Sakura and Sasuke disappeared. Naruko stayed still for a moment, choosing not to rush into things just yet. She summoned hundreds of clones, filling the training ground with a sea of blonde and red-haired figures. Each clone pulled out a kunai and charged at Kakashi before he even had time to pull out his orange book. Kakashi dealt with the clones as they approached, easily dismissing them one by one, as their chakra levels were minimal. While Kakashi handled the clones, Naruko and 5 other clones were meditating in a quieter part of the forest. The clones were spaced 5 feet apart in a circle, their calm aura blending into the surroundings. The group was preparing for Naruko's new jutsu, with the chakra swirling around her in a dense, powerful flow. Her allies each had smaller chakra auras surrounding them as they stood ready. Naruko, focused and determined, expelled some focused intent to ensure the environment stayed clear of distractions. After a few minutes of absolute silence, Naruko in the center swiftly moved through hand signs and brought her palms together. In that instant, all the shadows in the area seemed to gather around her, and then they erupted, forming a shadowy dome over Training Ground 7, casting it into complete darkness. Within the dense blackness, Naruko stood surrounded by 5 clones arranged in a pentagram formation. The original Naruko, smiling with satisfaction, was thrilled at the opportunity to truly test her abilities. "Special technique, pitch black," she and her clones announced in unison. Afterward, the real Naruko stood up and looked around, unable to see anything through her goggles. She smiled at the challenge and lifted her goggles, revealing eyes that shone brightly, their pupils blending seamlessly with her glowing white irises, her sclera a lilac shade. Naruko sprinted toward Kakashi, noting how her clones were beginning to fade. Her special eyes granted her unmatched clarity and precision in the oppressive darkness, giving her an advantage in this challenging environment. With Kakashi. Kakashi, though skilled, was clearly struggling in the suffocating darkness. His Sharingan helped him spot the clones when they were only a few feet away, giving him enough time to prepare. He had yet to use a single jutsu, relying on his kunai and his special eye to defend and counterattack. Despite this, he could sense the weight of the situation. He wasn't completely unprepared, but the odds were stacking up against him. Suddenly, he heard a series of poofs, and a flurry of kunai seemed to come from every direction, even from above. He ducked and rolled, noticing that the clones had risen into the air. Then, he heard another poof, and before he could react, he was knocked back, pummeled by the clones' swift attacks. They landed precise blows, yet Kakashi endured, his Onbu training allowing him to withstand the assault. Though battered, he rose to his feet, realizing he might have underestimated Naruko's capabilities. "That's impressive," Kakashi mused quietly, acknowledging the intensity of her abilities, especially as he felt the weight of her presence and the power emanating from her eyes. Kakashi looked directly ahead, and in the midst of the darkness, he saw them, the glowing eyes of Naruko. Her gaze was far more intense now, and Kakashi could sense the immense power radiating from her. His own vision, impaired by the relentless darkness, seemed to fail him in comparison. Despite the overwhelming odds, he struggled to maintain his focus, but Naruko's eyes remained the only thing he could clearly see, making them feel even more powerful. Just as he feared, Naruko charged toward him. Kakashi instinctively raised his kunai to block, but the force of her attack sent him stumbling backward. Another swing came from a different direction, and Kakashi managed to deflect it, though it grazed his ribs. With every strike, the speed and force intensified, pushing Kakashi to his limits. He was soon forced to back against a tree, holding his ground against the relentless strikes aimed at him. Naruko's presence loomed larger than ever, and her eyes seemed to pierce through him, instilling a deep, unshakable respect and fear. Then, Kakashi felt the sensation of wooden arms encircling him. The sound of bells jingling reached his ears, and with that, Naruko's special technique, pitch black, was deactivated. The shadows dispersed, and Naruko slid her goggles back down, once again veiling her unique eyes as the training ground returned to normal. Slowly, still a bit frozen with nervousness, Kakashi adjusted his headband to cover his Sharingan eye. He watched as the wooden swords disappeared like a dispelled clone, and then noticed another wooden limb holding a sharp wooden kunai near his throat. Kakashi wasn't as prideful as the last Uchiha, but he still had a sense of pride. And asking a Genin for help after being bested by them truly stung his pride. If he wasn't a shinobi, he might have just gone home to reflect on this defeat. The wooden restraints withered away harmlessly, releasing him without further damage to his pride. Naruko, you have earned the bells and have secured lunch, all on your own. Congratulations. Sasuke and Sakura appeared on either side of Naruko. Before Kakashi could finish his praise, Naruko, in one fluid motion, tossed a bell to both Sasuke and Sakura. She turned around and began walking away without saying a word. That was one of the most selfless things I've ever witnessed, Kakashi thought to himself, unaware of Naruko's clever reasoning. Naruko, wait. Sakura and Sasuke called out almost simultaneously. To their surprise, when Naruko turned around, she saw both of them holding out their bells toward her. You deserve this. I couldn't accept it if I didn't earn it myself, Sasuke said, appearing humble but with his usual air of arrogance. Sakura simply nodded, her reasoning clear in her own way, though it wasn't hard to figure out. That's really kind of you both, Naruko said, her tone a mix of insight and disbelief. But did you really take Kakashi seriously? Think about it. There's no such thing as a one-person or two-person squad. And notice how he emphasized single-handedly? That wasn't just a jab at you two, but a hint. Both Sasuke and Sakura's expressions shifted as they grasped the meaning. Kakashi clapped his hands together, impressed that Naruko had seen through the ruse. Great job, Naruko. From this point on, you're all officially members of Team 7. Congratulations. Sakura cheered in excitement, Sasuke smiled faintly, and Naruko wore a triumphant smirk. The determined Genin realized something important before anyone else: her teammates needed to train hard if they were going to succeed. She would do her best to protect them, but there was only so much she could do on her own. Konoha Hokage's office. It had been a few weeks since Team 7 officially came together. The team consisted of Naruko Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, and Sakura Haruno, his ever-dedicated fan. They were an unusual team by all standards, with some saying they reminded others of the three legendary Sannin. While others felt their teamwork needed improvement. They weren't as skilled at tracking like Team 8, although Naruko had a knack for it. They weren't as proficient in taijutsu like Team 9, but Naruko again had her strengths in that area. And their abilities didn't complement each other like Team 10, but Naruko was there to help guide them. Regardless, they were about to take on their first C-rank mission. The third Hokage shuffled through some scrolls, searching for the right one. After a brief moment of searching, he finally found it and handed it over to Kakashi, just as a knock sounded at the door. That must be the client, Kakashi remarked. An elderly man entered, his movements a bit unsteady. He leaned against the doorframe, holding a bottle in one hand. His gaze shifted from Sakura and Sasuke to Naruko, and his demeanor suddenly shifted. He seemed taken aback by Naruko's presence. These two? Well, they're interesting, he said, looking at Sakura and Sasuke. But when his eyes landed on Naruko, his tone changed. But her? I think this girl could handle any danger with ease. What's your name? Naruko, the young girl replied, her tone indifferent, already growing tired of the exaggerated compliments. It's a pleasure to meet you, Naruko. I'm Tazuna, the man responded with a somewhat flattering tone. Kakashi glanced at the third Hokage for confirmation. Our mission is to escort Tazuna back to the Land of Waves, right? Yes, it's a C rank, the third Hokage confirmed. Alright then, let's go, ragtag team, Kakashi said with a smirk, referring to his team as he walked out the door, Tazuna following behind. After a brief stop to gather their gear, the team regrouped at the village gate, ready for their journey. To the Land of Waves, Kakashi declared, and the team began their long trek. As they walked, Sakura chattered endlessly to Tazuna. Naruko, ever vigilant, noticed a suspicious puddle along the path. Her sharp instincts told her to stay alert. She observed it carefully but didn't show any outward concern. As they walked past the puddle, two ninjas suddenly leapt out from the shadows, attempting to trap Naruko with a spiked chain. But Naruko wasn't easily caught. With swift reflexes, she extended her forearms, and to the ninja's surprise, the chain bounced off her, unable to pierce her skin. The two attackers tried to close in on her, but Naruko quickly stopped them with an iron grip, her hands crushing their gauntlets as she easily overpowered them. With a fluid motion, she slammed both ninja together, knocking them out cold. Looks like I misjudged the material of their gauntlets, Naruko muttered to herself, more out of amusement than concern. Sasuke and Sakura stood by, each frustrated for different reasons. Sasuke, annoyed by what he saw as Naruko's arrogance, and Sakura, upset that Sasuke hadn't managed to do anything as impressive. Kakashi approached Naruko with a raised eyebrow. "What are you planning to do with them?" "I'm thinking of collecting their bounties, but I'm still deciding whether to leave them here or send them off with a clone," Naruko replied thoughtfully. Kakashi gave her a questioning look. "Well, it depends on what you want to do. Do you want to handle it yourself or leave it for someone else?" Naruko rubbed her chin, considering the options. In the past, she had used her abilities to get the better of tricky situations. She remembered how she'd outsmarted Mizuki years ago, using a wood clone to carry out a complex plan and learning several jutsu from the Forbidden Scroll. "Off with their heads, then," Naruko declared, her tone decisive. Kakashi looked at her in surprise but didn't object. Without further hesitation, Naruko swiftly incapacitated the two ninja, using her chakra-enhanced knives to render them unconscious. "All done," Naruko said, a faint smile on her face as she sealed the defeated enemies into scrolls. Her wood clone appeared, grabbed the scrolls, and transformed into a falcon, flying off at high speed, carrying the evidence of their mission back to the village. Kakashi observed with a mix of admiration and caution, recognizing just how much Naruko had learned and how capable she had become. Turning to Tazuna, Naruko narrowed her eyes. "All right, old man, enough with the games. What's really going on here?" she asked, her voice firm and unyielding. "Long story short, I'm building a bridge, but this person Gato is strongly against it, so they've hired some mercenaries to stop me," Tazuna explained simply. "This mission sounds like it could be an A rank, if you ask me," said the Jonin of the group. "I don't think we can handle this mission, but if you all really want to." Naruko had already started walking ahead. "Are you all coming?" she asked, without turning around. Both Sakura and Sasuke smiled and followed her, with Kakashi sighing and joining in, making sure they resumed their usual formation. They continued their journey to ensure Tazuna's safe arrival in Nami no Kuni. All seemed well. They crossed over some water, with Naruko walking on the surface as if it were no problem, much to Sasuke's annoyance. It was quite amusing. Then, they found themselves in thick mist, accompanied by a chilling sense of danger. This was especially noticeable for Sakura. And, well, let's just say she was a little nervous. Naruko and her team, along with Tazuna, had paused their journey because of the extremely thick fog that surrounded them. Kakashi felt uneasy, as the fog reminded him of Naruko's unique technique, which stirred painful memories. It reminded him of a past decision he deeply regretted, one that haunted him for weeks. Naruko, without hesitation, made the decision to remove her goggles. Kakashi immediately noticed, feeling a sense of unease as he turned his attention to the misty surroundings. Naruko's uncovered gaze pierced through the fog with ease, as if nothing had changed. Sasuke, Sakura, and Tazuna couldn't help but stare in awe, albeit with a sense of discomfort. Even though Sakura was scared stiff and Tazuna seemed extremely anxious, Sasuke, with his Sharingan, still felt the weight of the intense presence Naruko exuded, though he managed to keep himself composed. Ignoring them all, Naruko continued to survey the area, her eyes sharp as she noticed something hidden within the fog. The Predator, a nickname she had earned from Kakashi and the Uchiha clan, raised her left forearm, which shimmered with a strange metallic hue. At that moment, she caught a massive sword by its blade as it appeared seemingly from thin air. "Impressive, kid," a voice echoed, sounding as though it came from everywhere at once. "Demon of the Bloody Mist, Zabuza Momochi? This is the real challenge I've been waiting for," Naruko said with an excited glint in her eyes. She had studied Zabuza's history and admired his reputation, particularly his legendary sword. Zabuza, his voice laced with disdain, started to speak. "A cocky ninja, huh? Let's see how." His words trailed off as his eyes locked onto Naruko's. In that instant, he felt a wave of terror wash over him. Naruko grinned widely, noticing the fear that had taken hold of the fearsome swordsman. She released a surge of intense intent, focused entirely on Zabuza. Kakashi, Sasuke, Sakura, and Tazuna all felt the weight of her aura, paralyzed by the overwhelming presence. Zabuza himself struggled to maintain composure as he focused all his intent back on Naruko. But Naruko remained unaffected, she simply didn't react to the pressure. It was not in her nature to be intimidated. With a swift motion, Naruko threw the sword back toward Zabuza. He caught it with some difficulty but steeled himself, charging at her with the intent to strike. As he swung his sword in a horizontal arc, Naruko blocked it effortlessly before delivering a powerful punch to Zabuza's chest. The force of the punch sent him sliding back, visibly surprised by her strength. What is up with the color of her arm? Zabuza thought, noticing the strange, reflective quality of her skin. Naruko's arm had hardened to a metallic sheen, offering her enhanced defense as she braced herself against his attack. You're stronger than I thought, Zabuza said, slightly impressed. How did you handle the demon brothers? Naruko responded coldly, I took care of them. Collected their bounties. Her tone was matter of fact, she wasn't trying to boast or impress anyone, it was simply the reality of the situation. Zabuza, though minimally shocked, quickly recalled just who he was facing and steeled himself once more. He charged at Naruko again. This time, however, he was distracted by a scream. Sasuke, help! Sakura's voice rang out, her fear evident as a clone approached her. Unbeknownst to her, other clones had neutralized Sasuke and Kakashi. Naruko, still focused on her battle with Zabuza, ignored the call for help. Zabuza believed that Naruko's attention had shifted, and he seized the opportunity to strike. However, his blade collided with Naruko's forearm, which had been raised to block the attack. Did you really think I'd be distracted by them? Naruko's voice was icy, her gaze unwavering. Kakashi's been holding back, he's too focused on revenge. Sakura, well, she's not much help in this situation. And Sasuke is, as usual, too full of pride. In the end, it was me or them, and I chose me. Naruko's words, along with her unyielding stare, paralyzed Zabuza, and the two of them knew it. The shorter figure extended her arm outward, her skin stretching as if it were elastic, before quickly retracting. A pink hue surrounded her, and steam started rolling off her body. Naruko pulled her fist back, and it extended into a water clone, seemingly by accident. The clone immediately dispelled itself, freeing Kakashi. Naruko's arm then retracted almost in slow motion, and Zabuza heard a different voice and saw a different face, one with a scar just below her left eye as Naruko announced the name of her technique. Gum Gum Jet. The arm disappeared from view and shot forward, striking Zabuza and sending him crashing into a tree. Pistol. Zabuza was left in confusion, unsure of what had just happened. Naruko, having left her empowered state, walked toward Zabuza's crumpled form against the tree. The giant cleaver had been dropped and stuck into the ground. Naruko grabbed it, hefted it into the air, and swung it down in front of the demon man's neck. This was a good fight, but you let me get inside your head, hitting you twice in the same spot. I felt a few fractures, not the best choice. But don't worry, once I claim your bounty, I'll carry this sword in your memory. Naruko began to speak as a needle suddenly struck Zabuza's neck, causing him to lose consciousness. And he's out, what the heck, who took my kill? Naruko asked, glancing around, the tension from earlier now completely gone. That would be me, came the voice of a hunter nin who had appeared beside Zabuza. The hunter nin swiftly took the demon's sword and body before disappearing. I can't stand hunter nins, especially when they're in cahoots with their target, Naruko muttered, clearly annoyed by the situation, and pulled her goggles back down to cover her eyes. The team gathered together once again and shakily fell into their turtle formation, with Naruko walking forward casually, hands in her pockets. Her sudden change in demeanor didn't go unnoticed by the others. They couldn't quite understand it, it was strange seeing her so different but still the same. They continued on and eventually arrived at Tazuna's house. Tazuna's daughter thanked them for their help and expressed admiration for Naruko, much to Sasuke's dismay. She then welcomed them inside for a warm, home-cooked meal. You all will need some training, Kakashi remarked casually to his team, addressing Sasuke and Sakura, though he hoped Naruko understood that as well. Sasuke and Sakura looked up, but Naruko remained focused on her food. She was listening, but she had no interest in participating in any training offered to the other two. I'll begin your training tomorrow so you can actually do something against Zabuza's allies, Kakashi informed his less experienced Shinon. I'll scout the area and get a layout of the place, and hopefully figure out where Zabuza is hiding. Because he's scared of me, Naruko said aloud, mostly to herself, as she intended to do it regardless of what anyone else thought. Just then, Inari, Tazuna's grandson, walked into the room. You guys do, Inari started, looking a little angry, but Naruko turned her gaze toward him with a calm intensity. What did you say? Naruko asked in an eerily calm tone, causing the small child to freeze. And nothing, Inari stammered, visibly shaking as he quickly retreated to his room. What did you do? Sakura asked, confused by the interaction. It's simple. I scared him enough that he thought if he cried, I'd hurt him. It's not just fear, it's a form of respect born from fear, Naruko explained matter-of-factly. Damn, I've never seen anything like that. Kakashi and Sasuke thought, unknowingly in sync with their admiration. Naruko was undeniably skilled, and the potential she held was remarkable. Though it was a bit intimidating, it was clear that she knew how to control it. After all, if she didn't manage her power, her overwhelming presence could easily frighten everyone around her, which would be problematic for the village. Naruko, however, had developed immense control through her training, using her abilities strategically rather than recklessly. Once everyone had finished their meal, they retired to their rooms. Naruko's clones kept watch while the team slept peacefully, and the night passed without incident. Kakashi had begun Sasuke and Sakura's training, explaining the importance of their progress, how it would benefit them, and why Naruko didn't need such training. He emphasized what was at stake and how much room for improvement they had. As Naruko passed by on her way to her own training, Kakashi called out, "Naruko, would you be willing to give us a demonstration?" Kakashi asked, gesturing to a tree. He hoped Naruko would accept. "Sure," Naruko responded casually. It was no big deal to her, and she enjoyed showcasing her abilities, especially in front of the Uchiha. As she approached the tree, she considered what her next move should be. After a moment, she decided to meditate, using it as a form of training, though no one around her understood whether it was a deliberate strategy or simply a way to center herself. This approach intrigued Sakura, who gained a newfound respect for the blonde, while Sasuke, on the other hand, felt both frustrated and awed. He couldn't ignore the fact that Naruko's calm demeanor and skill were impressive. Pleased to see both Sasuke and Sakura determined to master tree walking, Kakashi followed suit and climbed the tree, standing on a branch near Naruko. Though Naruko could sense his presence, she didn't pay him much attention. Instead, she relied on her cosmic eye, a technique she had honed through meditation. It allowed her to tap into a heightened awareness of her surroundings, including sensing distant locations and even detecting Zabuza and his accomplice. Though she located them, Naruko chose not to pursue them immediately, wanting to face Zabuza when they were both at their full strength. Instead, she decided to focus on her own training. Naruko began by creating as many shadow clones as she could, a total of 2,000. She instructed each clone to meditate and gather chakra before beginning any real activity. Once they had accumulated the necessary energy, she divided them into groups of 50, with each group working on a different technique or jutsu. Some groups focused on manipulating the elements, wind, water, earth, and wood, the elements Naruko had mastery over. The benefits of her cosmic energy were numerous, especially with guidance from an ancient bijou. The rest of Naruko's training was a testament to her dedication. She enhanced her body using gravity seals, which made her training more intense. With a heavy sword, she practiced kenjutsu, determined to match Zabuza in his own domain. She had several clones practice alongside her, helping maintain her chakra levels and occasionally dispelling themselves to provide Naruko with a boost of energy when needed. Time passed, and Naruko's training became repetitive, yet each movement brought her closer to her goal. Her muscles began to ache, a sign that the training was paying off. Hours later, Naruko trudged back to Tazuna's house, her body exhausted and her chakra reserves depleted. The effort of the day had taken a toll on her, but she remained determined. Her muscles ached in ways she hadn't thought possible, yet she still managed to keep moving, marveling at how her body responded despite the exhaustion. "You know, you could restore your energy by unsealing my chakra," the old fox, Kurama, reminded her from within the double seal she had placed on him. "What's the point of that?" Naruko grumbled, tired but still holding a strong sense of purpose. "You were so naive when you sealed me. You would retain all the benefits of your training if you just unsealed me," Kurama replied. "That's not the point," Naruko retorted. "The point is to stay under the radar and keep the Akatsuki off my back. I can't risk using my full strength all the time." Kurama couldn't help but be impressed by Naruko's discipline, especially since she had deliberately limited her power to stay on a level playing field with others. Her choice reflected the mental and emotional toll her training had put her through, but it also showed the depth of her commitment. Naruko continued her slow march toward the house, her exhaustion clearly visible. People often saw her as a force of nature, both powerful and skilled, but few understood the extent to which she held herself back in order to live among them. Despite all that, she could be a bit too hard on herself. "But you can remove the gravity seal when you're not training, can't you?" Kurama asked, pointing out an obvious solution. Feeling a pang of embarrassment at her oversight, Naruko quickly removed the seal and picked up the pace, making her way back to the house. She arrived in a reasonable amount of time, though she was too tired to notice much. After grabbing a quick snack, Naruko collapsed into bed. Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi were all asleep, though Kakashi, trained to wake at the slightest movement, stirred briefly before going back to sleep upon realizing it was just Naruko. Konoha. The Hokage sat in his office, carefully reading a scroll with great attention to detail. The sun had just risen, and he was revisiting the scroll that had arrived the day before. Naruko has managed to defeat the Demon Brothers, and now she says she'll continue with what could potentially become a B or A rank mission. That young one is incredibly strong. The Hokage glanced at a picture of Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, before returning his gaze to the scroll. After a brief moment of reflection, he summoned Team 9. He also wrote a note detailing the events involving Naruko and handed it to a clone of hers, which immediately jumped out of the window, transforming into a peregrine falcon mid-flight. The Hokage watched as the falcon soared in the direction of Naruko. "She's certainly a prodigy," he muttered, before being informed that Team 9 had arrived. He instructed them to enter. Meanwhile, with Naruko. Naruko awoke to find the room empty. After a moment of stretching, she headed downstairs and quickly devoured her breakfast without a word. Once finished, she went outside and sat in front of the forest, meditating. As she did, a scroll landed softly on her lap. The falcon that had carried it earlier transformed back into a Naruto clone and disintegrated with the sound of wood cracking and fading away. Naruko paused her meditation, picked up the scroll, and began reading. After finishing it, she walked back inside and tossed the scroll to Kakashi. "Tell me about Team 9, Sensei," Naruko asked once he had finished reading. Kakashi gave her a neutral look and explained, "The leader is Might Guy, known for his extreme physical strength and obsession with the will of fire and the power of youth. His protege is Rock Lee, who is quite similar to him in terms of enthusiasm. Neji Hyuga is a prodigy, and Tenten is a weapon specialist. So they're all strong. But who's the fastest?" Naruko asked with curiosity. She always liked to gauge her training in comparison to others, especially those ranked the same as her. She intended to keep her edge and maintain the appearance of being a seasoned jounin, no matter who the new Junon were. "If I know Guy, and sadly, I do, Lee probably has weighted leg gear," Kakashi said thoughtfully. Naruko smirked at this information and returned to her training grounds. This time, she decided to challenge herself even further. She strapped on a 20-pound wristband on each wrist, a 100-pound vest on her torso, and 20-pound ankle bands. Then she began her usual exercises, including handstand push-ups, tree-hanging crunches, and upside-down squats. She pushed herself until she could move effortlessly with the additional weights. Once she was accustomed to the new load, Naruko began meditating again, using her chakra to refine her focus. Through this deep meditation, she tapped into a unique form of energy, cosmic energy, which flowed through her chakra, enhancing her strength and spiritual energy. This new power, however, had an effect on her personality. When she had an excess of it, she became more calm and detached, which was why she had always seemed reserved at the academy. She rarely had the opportunity to fight anyone strong enough to challenge her, and thus, she never truly let her cosmic chakra run wild. Once she gathered enough chakra, Naruko created 1,000 shadow clones. She divided them into groups of 50, each group focusing on a different chakra exercise: leaf controlling, water walking, and tree walking, each designed to perfect her chakra control, which had been one of her long-term goals. Naruko also set up a few clones to meditate and replenish her chakra reserves. She created wood clones to spar with as well, switching between different weapons with each duel. Her sparring partners were endlessly varied, using everything from giant swords to throwing knives. There was no weapon they didn't practice with. Naruko knew that her powerful tenant, the Nine-Tails Fox, leaked energy while she slept, though she rarely mentioned it. It was during her sleep that the seals on the fox were at their weakest, so it made sense that the fox could release some of its energy at those times. Naruko, however, simply let it happen, since she could not do anything about it. It didn't bother her, and if it made the fox feel better to think that she was unaware, she allowed it. To further her knowledge, Naruko had 10 clones assigned to research. They were tasked with gathering information on potential allies, rivals, and opponents. She had them look into the Hyuga clan's Byakugan, as well as the Uchiha clan's Sharingan, knowing that understanding her competitors would give her an advantage. Naruko wasn't naive enough to think she could take them on without knowing all there was to know about them. This training cycle continued day after day, with Naruko consistently increasing her weights by 20 pounds. She maintained this routine until she would eventually face Zabuza. Team 9's arrival did little to interrupt her training, as she preferred to train in solitude, deep within the forest. No one was brave enough to follow her into that mysterious and intimidating place, where she carried out her relentless training undisturbed. Teams 7 and 8 were on guard while Tazuna worked on his bridge. All of them were gathered together, staying alert. Hello, Team 8. I'm Kakashi Hatake, and this is Naruko Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, and Sakura Haruno. Kakashi introduced himself and his team with a wave toward each of them. I am the youthful Might Guy, and these are my students, Neji Hyuga, Rock Lee, and Tenten, Guy said enthusiastically, as always, in his energetic voice. Rock Lee admired Sakura, felt challenged by Sasuke, and had a deep respect for Naruko. Neji appeared indifferent to the others, although he secretly feared Naruko. Tenten, meanwhile, wasn't too judgmental, but she did feel uneasy around Naruko. Sakura didn't form strong opinions of any of them, but she couldn't help but feel that Rock Lee's energetic admiration for her was a bit much. Sasuke saw every one of them as a challenge, especially Neji. The group was split into formation, with Naruko and Lee taking the front, and Neji, Sasuke, Tenten, and Sakura closer to Tazuna. Kakashi and Guy stood off to the side, ready to step in if needed. Kakashi had full confidence in Naruko to handle Zabuza, and Guy trusted Lee to do his best, supporting Kakashi's faith in Naruko's abilities. Everyone was deeply cautious of Naruko, staying out of her path as much as possible. Suddenly, an eerie mist began to roll in, thick and blinding, separating the groups. Lee, these enemies are formidable. This is a serious fight. Protect those who need it, Naruko said firmly to Lee, her tone serious. Forgive me, Naruko. I must protect my lady, Lee shouted as he sprinted toward Sakura. I prefer fighting alone anyway, Naruko replied with a confident grin. In front of Naruko, 4 figures emerged from the mist. 2 of them were clearly Zabuza and Haku, but the other 2 were unfamiliar. Naruko quickly adjusted her goggles, identifying one as Aoi and the other as Suigetsu. Who are these newcomers? Naruko demanded, her voice sharp. Suigetsu and Aoi, Zabuza replied, introducing the 2 new ninjas. Naruko assessed them, her gaze intense, her presence overwhelming. She used her powerful aura to unsettle them, her killing intent palpable. Neji, handle the one with white hair. Tenten, Lee, you take the one in green. Sasuke, focus on the masked one. Her command was unquestioned, and the team swiftly followed. Neji targeted Suigetsu with his gentle fist technique, Tenten used her chain scythe to strike at him, and Lee executed a sweeping kick. Naruko charged at Zabuza with greater speed than before, delivering a solid palm strike to his sternum, knocking him back. Sasuke leapt at the masked opponent, aiming a kick, narrowly missing but still maintaining composure as the opponent quickly recovered. So, you're finally using your team? Zabuza mocked, clearly underestimating Naruko. Naruko grinned in response, a confident and almost challenging expression. I just want a fair fight. Once I defeat you, I'll take care of your little friends. I could take all of you down if I wanted, but I don't feel the need to, Naruko stated, her voice calm yet filled with certainty. Bullshit. You think you can handle all of us? Zabuza scoffed. Naruko simply shrugged, shedding her heavy gear. She darted forward at incredible speed, landing another series of strikes to Zabuza's stomach and chest, sending him flying back. You might have taken me down easily, but it doesn't look like your friends are faring as well. Zabuza muttered as he watched the battle unfold. Lee and Tenten were dealing with Aoi without much trouble, and Neji had Suigetsu well under control. However, Sasuke seemed to be in trouble, surrounded by a maze of ice. Damn it, Sasuke. Kakashi, Guy, keep Zabuza contained until I return, Naruko ordered, sprinting toward the ice dome, breaking through a mirror to reach Sasuke. Kakashi and Guy nodded, stepping in to hold Zabuza back as they observed their students facing off against opponents of higher rank with pride. Naruko had dashed forward and caught Sasuke as he was sent flying, multiple senbon embedded in his body. Sasuke cracked open his eyes and gazed up at Naruko, a deep sense of fear striking him as he saw her eyes, stronger than he had ever witnessed, likely because she had unlocked her Sharingan, albeit with only one tomoe in each eye. The boy froze in terror, but his fear intensified when another senbon pierced his arm and also struck Naruko, mingling their blood. Neither of them gave it much thought, but Naruko quickly pulled the senbon out of her and lowered Sasuke gently to the ground. Hey, pink eyes. How are you holding up? Naruko teased Sasuke with a playful grin, though her tone carried no malice. And not well. I can feel my Sharingan fading. Sasuke confessed, desperation evident in his voice as his vision continued to worsen. His body was in such a weakened state that he couldn't even maintain his level 1 Sharingan. His pale face and struggle to stay conscious told the story. You got hit hard by an ice user? You're definitely going to feel that tomorrow. Naruko remarked, her voice laced with a hint of amusement at Sasuke's misfortune. I can't die here. Sasuke tried to speak, fighting the urge to collapse, but his chakra reserves were almost depleted. His vision blurred, and his strength faltered. Just rest for now, Naruko advised, delivering a light tap to Sasuke's head, knocking him into unconsciousness. She gently laid him down, hoping to rid him of some of his arrogance. You'll pay for what you did to Zabuza, Haku threatened, holding Senbone in her hand as she glared at Naruko. Naruko simply stood tall, meeting Haku's gaze with unwavering confidence. Does someone need to take their anger out? Go ahead, let it all out, Naruko said with a smirk, casually extending her arms and legs as though inviting Haku to attack. Haku unleashed a barrage of Senbone from every ice mirror, thousands of needles flying at Naruko. Despite the relentless assault, Naruko stood her ground. Some Senbone barely pierced her skin, while others didn't penetrate at all. Haku's attacks were ineffective, and after a moment, she paused, puzzled by the lack of damage. Is that all? Naruko asked, unimpressed, her gaze fixed on Haku as she continued to stand tall, untouched. Haku was confused as she watched the edges of Naruko's irises shift, the tomoe in her Sharingan briefly forming and blurring again. Before Haku could process what was happening, Naruko struck with incredible speed, delivering a powerful punch to Haku's gut. The impact shattered all the ice mirrors surrounding them, sending Haku flying backward, her mask cracking and revealing her true identity as a female. It makes sense now, Naruko mused as she walked past the shattered ice mirrors. After all the effort I put into beating Zabuza, taking you down was easy. You being a girl doesn't change much. You two have two options, Naruko continued, turning to face both Haku and Zabuza. Join Konoha or leave this place. Your choice. Naruko, I don't think. Kakashi began, but Naruko shot him a look full of intent so strong that he immediately froze, nearly losing his composure. And here I thought the nightmares were over. Kakashi thought to himself, sweat dripping down his brow. Zabuza looked at his disheveled allies, all of them in poor condition, and knew they were no match for Naruko. The tension was thick as Naruko swiftly kicked Suigetsu off the bridge and punched Aoi over the railing. With no way out, Zabuza had no choice but to consider Naruko's offer. From the other end of the bridge, the sound of hundreds of footsteps echoed, and Gato appeared with a band of mercenaries. Naruko's voice rang out mockingly, "Oh, it's pitiful Gato. How many mercenaries did you bring this time?" About 300, Gato stammered, clearly terrified. Naruko grinned. Don't forget the 4 down at Tazuna's house. Well, never mind. They're no longer a concern. Naruko's expression shifted to a steely seriousness, and her killing intent radiated outwards. The air became thick with pressure, and soon, most of the mercenaries began to faint from sheer fear. Gato, too, collapsed, his body trembling as Naruko's chakra surged. With a swift motion, Naruko grabbed Gato by the neck, lifting him high above her head before hurling him into the ocean. Gato vanished from sight as Naruko turned back to face Zabuza. Zabuza, make your choice. Join me or perish here, Naruko said firmly, her eyes never leaving the former rogue ninja. Zabuza, with a look of resolve, turned to Haku and then back at Naruko. I'll join you, he declared. Excellent, Naruko responded, pleased. As Zabuza and Haku stood, Naruko summoned a swarm of leaves, which gently carried Zabuza's sword over to her. She grasped it firmly, channeling her wind chakra into the blade, creating a gust that pushed everyone back. A smile spread across her face as she swung the massive sword with ease, satisfied with her control over it. I'll be holding on to this, she declared confidently, securing the sword on her back with chakra. Let's go, team. Naruko called to her allies, and together, they began their journey back to Tazuna's house. Upon their arrival, they found Naruto's clones already working to dispose of the bodies of the fallen mercenaries. With the immediate danger behind them, Naruko began constructing a new house using her wood-style jutsu, accommodating everyone for a well-deserved rest. The next morning, Naruko awoke early, resuming her intense training with heavier weights and a stronger gravity seal. Her clones sparred with each other, and she trained with her wood clones, preparing for the upcoming Chunin exams. As the days passed, Naruko continued her rigorous practice, leaving her comrades to wonder just what kind of training she was undertaking. Unbeknownst to everyone, Naruko had also discovered her Sharingan abilities had evolved, likely due to the mix of Sasuke's Uchiha blood and her own unique chakra. With the bridge almost completed, all that remained was for Naruko and her team to head back to the village, where greater challenges awaited. But for now, Naruko focused on her training, determined to rise to the top. Naruko was currently waiting outside the front gates of Konoha for her team and Team 9. Earlier, Rock Lee had challenged her to a friendly race. Kakashi encouraged Naruko to give it her best, so she removed her training weights and deactivated her gravity seal. She then channeled a large amount of cosmic chakra into her legs and dashed all the way to the village gates. Needless to say, she won the race quite easily. Knowing she'd be waiting for a while, Naruko created a shadow clone and had it take her belongings home, along with instructions to bring back a large bowl of ramen for her to enjoy. Once she finished her meal and had some time to herself, Naruko began meditating, this time focusing on her cosmic eye ability, which gave her a perception similar to the Byakugan, but with enhanced range and detail. When Lee and the others finally arrived, both teams made their way to the Hokage's office. Naruko stepped forward to explain the situation regarding Zabuza and Haku to the third Hokage. So, you're suggesting that Zabuza and Haku become part of the Leaf Village? The elderly Hokage asked thoughtfully. This wasn't a typical proposal, especially coming from Naruko. Yes, Naruko replied confidently. I was thinking that Haku could either join our team or perhaps the two of us could form a special unit. Both Sasuke and I can personally vouch for Haku's skills, they're at least Genin level. As for Zabuza, I believe it would be wise to have him evaluated by Inoki and his team to ensure everything is properly assessed. Everyone was a bit surprised. Those who thought they knew Naruko well didn't expect such compassion and initiative from her. Well, I don't see any major issue with that plan, the Hokage said after a moment of thought. We'll officially allow Zabuza and Haku to be considered for entry into the village. However, Naruko, you'll be responsible for arranging their temporary living arrangements until they earn our full trust. For now, Haku will be classified as a special operative and won't be placed on a team or participate in the Chunin exams. 2 Anbu squads arrived to escort Zabuza and Haku. Before they left, Naruko requested that they be brought to her home once their evaluations were complete. Once dismissed, Team 7 and Team 9 went their separate ways. Kakashi took his team to Training Ground 7. As they were walking, Naruko asked a question that had been on her mind. So, when are the Chunin exams? She asked, looking at Kakashi with curiosity. Kakashi blinked, surprised. How did you know that's what I wanted to talk about? He asked, visibly caught off guard. He had given no signs, made no announcement, and yet somehow Naruko had predicted his intention. Naruko just shrugged casually. I didn't. Just a lucky guess. Kakashi stood still, silently processing everything. This girl had not only kept up with him in battle but had also outmaneuvered powerful opponents like Zabuza. And now, without any clues, she had guessed exactly what was on his mind. She was full of surprises. Once Kakashi shook off the moment, the team arrived at the familiar spot where they had once taken the bell test. Ahem. To answer your question, Naruko, the Chunin exams are about a week away, Kakashi confirmed. That's why I brought you all here. If you decide to participate, I'll let you know where the first stage will be held. After this announcement, Kakashi left the team to consider their choices, vanishing quietly. Not long after, Naruko also disappeared, each heading to different destinations. The next day. I'm afraid Naruko has secluded herself in her estate, the third Hokage informed her teammates and sensei. She has an estate? Sasuke asked in disbelief. She does, Hiruzen responded calmly. The details are classified. Only Naruko, those she trusts, and a very limited number of others are aware of the reasons. It's up to her to share the information when she's ready. Kakashi already knew, and as usual, Sakura was preoccupied with Sasuke, paying little attention. For now, Hiruzen continued, Sai will temporarily join Team 7 in Naruko's place, until she returns from her personal training. With that, the quiet and composed Sai was introduced to the team. Kakashi took the mission scroll, and with his team and Sai in tow, left the Hokage's office to begin their next assignment. Later that day, Naruko was returning to her home after picking up a few supplies. On the way, she spotted the Hokage's grandson, Konohamaru, being teased by someone. Without hesitation, Naruko handed the supplies to a shadow clone to send them home and made her way over to the scene, where a ninja dressed in black from the Sand Village was holding the child by a scarf. Come on, Kankuro, let the kid go, Tamari began to scold her brother, but she suddenly locked eyes with the approaching blonde girl in goggles and froze in surprise. Wah, who is she? Kankuro started to ask, but the moment he made eye contact with Naruko, he stopped speaking. A chilling intensity in Naruko's gaze stunned him. He wasn't used to feeling this kind of pressure, not even around Gaara. Who is she? She's more intense than Gaara. Both sand ninja silently thought in synchronized shock. Kankuro was so overwhelmed that he unintentionally released Konohamaru from his grip. That's Konohamaru Sarutobi, the grandson of the third Hokage, Naruko said calmly, her voice cool and composed. Messing with him could be seen as a sign of disrespect to the Hokage. She's right, Kankuro, a voice said as Gaara appeared with a swirl of sand between Naruko and Kankuro, disrupting the moment and shifting everyone's attention. Gaara's steady gaze met Naruko's, and although he showed no fear on the surface, both he and the tailed beast within him were rattled. The one tail could sense the incredible presence of the 9 tails sealed within Naruko and immediately recognized her strength. You should probably keep a better eye on your friends, Naruko added, tone even. Anyway, I'm Naruko. What's your name? I'm Gaara, he replied, his tone cool but slightly guarded. Naruko smirked lightly. Even when someone tried to hide it, she could always tell when she was being feared. Just then, Sasuke arrived and observed the entire interaction from behind Konohamaru and his friends. He was intrigued by Naruko's presence and impressed by the way she commanded attention without saying much. Before he could gather his thoughts, both Naruko and the Sand siblings disappeared, leaving him silently confused. A little while later, Sasuke and Sakura were on their way to the Chunin exams when they heard 2 voices up ahead. Lee, I'm not going to spar with you right now. It's right before the exams, you'd be at a disadvantage, Naruko's voice said patiently. Don't underestimate me. I've trained for this. Lee replied enthusiastically. Alright, Naruko sighed, clearly giving in. Let's see what you've got. Sasuke and Sakura turned the corner to see Naruko facing Rock Lee in a training bout. Naruko wore a deep red sleeveless shirt and heavy wrist and ankle bands that covered up to her elbows and knees. Despite the weight of the bands, nearly 100 pounds each, she moved with effortless grace. Her pants and sandals were similar to those of an Anbu operative, and her form looked powerful, her muscles toned. A seal could be seen faintly glowing on her back, designed to increase gravity around her, yet she carried it all with ease. Lee charged with speed and determination, aiming to knock Naruko off balance. But the moment his kick connected with her leg, he felt as if he'd struck a tree trunk. She didn't budge. I might have developed a new defense, but that doesn't make me easy to beat, Naruko stated, calmly observing Lee's movements. Lee continued his barrage of swift and spirited attacks, but none seemed to faze Naruko in the slightest. She even took a light kick to the side of her head while speaking casually to her teammates. Hey, do you think I should carry this or keep it sealed away? Naruko asked, pulling out the massive Kubi Kiribocho sword with one hand. I think it'd be more impressive if you carried it, Lee said mid-kick, offering his opinion without hesitation. Thanks, Naruko smiled, strapping the large weapon to her back. Sasuke and Sakura exchanged surprised looks, amazed by how normal the conversation between the two remained, even as Lee was actively attacking her. It's been fun, Lee, Naruko said cheerfully. She gently caught his next kick, redirected him into the air, and sent him sliding into a nearby wall, not forcefully, but enough to end the sparring. You've improved a lot. Keep training. Maybe next time you'll find a way around my iron skin technique. Lee, though temporarily stuck in the wall, smiled proudly at the compliment. Yes. I'll keep working hard. Naruko walked off, heading toward the exam building. Now, Team 7 stood in front of the doors, pausing for a brief moment. Anyone want to say something inspirational? A heartfelt message? No? Alright, let's keep it simple, Naruko said. She lifted her leg and gently opened the doors with a powerful kick that sent a burst of wind through the hallway. She stepped inside and greeted the gathered crowd with a confident grin. Hey everyone. The room full of Jinan turned to look at her in surprise. Her entrance had certainly made an impression. You've sure made an entrance, a fellow examinee said as he approached. I'm Kabuto. You must be rookies. I've taken the exams a few times, I can offer you some help. And what kind of help would that be? Sasuke asked, clearly skeptical. My ninja info cards, Kabuto replied, displaying a small deck of cards. He gave a brief explanation of how they worked. Sasuke requested cards on Rock Lee, Gaara, and Naruko Uzumaki. Kabuto shared the info he had, though when it came to Naruko, the details were surprisingly vague. Looks like someone's been keeping her background sealed up tight, Kabuto thought silently, frustrated. Naruko smirked to herself. It meant her efforts to stay off the radar were working perfectly. Suddenly, a sharp voice interrupted the room. "Take your seats, everyone," said Iviki Morino, stepping into the room. "I'm your proctor for the first part of the tuning exams." After everyone took their seats and Iviki explained the first part of the exam, the Jinan reluctantly began the written test. Most of them had been hoping to avoid a written portion entirely, but here it was. Naruko didn't have anyone she was close to seated nearby, except for Hinata, who was directly in front of her. While many of the other participants kept their distance from Naruko, Hinata seemed different. She admired the so-called monster of Konoha, Naruko Uzumaki. Reflecting on it, Naruko realized she actually cared about Hinata more than most people. That realization didn't change her priorities, though. Naruko had a goal she was determined to reach, and nothing would slow her down. That didn't mean she couldn't return Hinata's feelings one day. For now, she wanted to see how those feelings developed, but she also made a quiet promise to herself: she'd make sure Hinata got through this test as safely as possible. Shifting focus back to the exam, Naruko carefully read each question, then glanced around the room. She observed her surroundings closely and soon realized something important. A few of the other ninja in the room were clearly tuning. This wasn't an ordinary test where studying beforehand would help. The point was to quietly find the answers, by observing and borrowing information from others who knew them. This was a test of strategy, awareness, and subtlety. Realizing this, Naruko decided not to write down a single answer. Instead, she locked eyes with the proctor, Iviki, challenging him silently with a confident smirk. Iviki was caught off guard. This wasn't the kind of behavior he expected from a Jinan. The proctor quickly recognized her, Naruko Uzumaki, the one Kakashi had famously nicknamed the monster of Konoha. Her reputation preceded her, and she was living up to it. Leaning back in her chair, Naruko propped her feet up on the desk and waited. Eventually, Iviki called for attention, smacking the chalkboard. "Forget the questions. Here's the real challenge," he announced. "The 10th question will determine whether you proceed to the next part of the exam. You may choose to take it, but if you get it wrong, you won't be allowed to take the tuning exams again. Or, you can opt out now and try again next year. However, if one person leaves, their entire team is disqualified." Naruko rolled her eyes internally. As if anyone's going to walk out because of one mysterious question, she thought. This whole thing's a test of courage. With a determined look, she folded her arms and stared down the proctor, daring him to test her resolve. Still, some Jinan began to leave, shaken by the pressure. Naruko noticed a few familiar faces hesitating too, so she stood up. Without leaving her desk, she placed both hands firmly on it. The force surprised everyone and shook the desks nearby, catching the attention of the room. Cracking her fingers, Naruko gave the others a silent message: "You're stronger than this. Don't give up." Her bold stance gave the remaining Jinan the confidence they needed to stay. Seeing that no one else intended to leave, and perhaps sensing that Naruko was moments away from turning her defiance into action, Iviki smiled slightly. "Congratulations, you all pass," he announced. "I got it," Naruko said confidently, nodding at him. She had understood perfectly. The true test was about staying calm under pressure and facing the unknown. Before Iviki could continue, the window burst open and a lively figure entered the room in a swirl of motion. A banner unfurled behind her as she introduced herself with energy and flair. "Hello, everyone. I hope you're all ready, because things are about to get exciting," Anko declared enthusiastically to the Jinan. Iviki raised an eyebrow. "Anko, that entrance was dramatic. What's with the number of participants?" she asked. "It's because of the one with the confident smirk," Iviki replied, nodding toward Naruko. Anko followed his gaze and locked eyes with Naruko. The Jinan's trademark goggles and confident grin made an impression. Anko quickly shook it off, leapt out the window, and waved for the Jinan to follow. "Let's move. The second stage takes place in the Forest of Death," she called out. Once the classroom had emptied, Iviki collected the tests. When he reached Naruko's desk, he noticed it was perfectly intact, despite what had appeared earlier, and the test was completely blank. "She figured it out," he said to himself, impressed. "If she doesn't become a Chunin, I'll be having words with the other examiners." Outside, the Jinan were now gathered in front of a tall fence surrounding the Forest of Death. Anko had just finished explaining the next stage, handed out scrolls to each team, and had them sign waivers. Every team now stood at their designated gate. "Another door," Naruko murmured to herself. Her team heard her, though she hadn't said it loudly. As the signal was given, Naruko stepped forward and calmly opened the door before darting into the forest at full speed, paving the way for her team. Soon, Team 7 had established a temporary base halfway between the edge of the forest and the tower at its center. Sasuke and Sakura sat near a small campfire, quietly eating. Naruko, meanwhile, stood away from the light, gazing out into the darkened forest. Her goggles were off, revealing her glowing white irises, now framed by 3 distinct tomoe. With her enhanced vision, Naruko could see through nearly any obstacle and track chakra with pinpoint precision. Her eyes weren't just for show, they were tools of clarity, awareness, and strength. From the shadows, Orochimaru observed his next target. He had taken an interest in Naruko's remarkable eyes, ones that captivated him even more than the famed Sharingan. As his curiosity deepened, he recalled that Kabuto had little intel on this particular ninja. That only piqued Orochimaru's interest further. Soon, he devised a plan, one in which the roles of Sasuke and Naruko would be unexpectedly flipped. While Sasuke stepped away from the camp for a moment, a massive snake appeared and kept him occupied. Meanwhile, Orochimaru disguised himself as Sasuke and returned to the campsite with the intent to brand Naruko and confront Sakura. However, Naruko instantly sensed something was wrong. With swift reflexes, she unleashed a slash from her massive blade, the Kubikirabocho. The force created a powerful shockwave that leveled the camp and nearly caught Orochimaru off guard. Fortunately for him, he leapt into the trees just in time. "You're Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin?" Naruko asked, her eyes narrowing. "Sakura, try to find Sasuke and stay safe, alright?" she added calmly, before focusing her attention back on Orochimaru. "What do you even want with me?" "Actually, I already know." Naruko answered her own question, her voice firm with clarity. After all, she was the same Junon who had held her own against Zabuza. "Yes, I wish to challenge you. I want to see how powerful you've become," Orochimaru admitted, dropping his disguise. "I doubt even the Hokage could truly stop you," Naruko replied coolly, clearly uninterested in fighting a battle she couldn't win. "It's not about winning or losing," Orochimaru said. "Consider it a test of skill. Nothing more." Their exchange sounded more like a discussion between competitors than a clash between enemies. But then Orochimaru made a mistake. "Actually, bring your best. Come at me with everything you've got." Naruko smirked, not out of malice but out of confidence. In an instant, she launched at him with a powerful swing. Orochimaru dodged and countered with a punch to the midsection, only for Naruko to vanish in a puff of smoke. A shadow clone. Another pop followed, and before Orochimaru could react, a kick connected with his face, sending him tumbling through a row of trees. It turned out the figure with the sword was also a wood clone, cleverly disguised. Naruko had transformed into the Kubikirabocho itself, wielded by another shadow clone, a deceptive but brilliant strategy. Orochimaru had clearly underestimated her. As the real Naruko approached, Orochimaru attempted a high-powered kick, but she vanished again, another wood clone. "She has wood style?" Orochimaru muttered in disbelief. His fascination with Naruko grew immensely. He descended to the forest floor, trying to locate her. But before he could find the original, thousands of shadow clones fell from above. Though individually easy to defeat, their teamwork made them formidable, and they managed to land several coordinated blows. Far from the action, Naruko was in the shadows preparing one of her personal techniques, pitch black. Using her clones as both decoys and data gatherers, she analyzed Orochimaru's movements and power level. Knowing she had limited time, she sped up the preparation of her jutsu, reducing its usual duration in exchange for launching it quickly. Darkness spread across the forest of death, blanketing it in shadows. Naruko surged forward, moving closer while her clones continued the assault. Orochimaru, despite the darkness, could still sense the chakra around him and used it to defend himself. Even so, the coordinated attacks began to wear him down. Then, Naruko struck from a different angle. She used wood style to send tree roots underground to ensnare Orochimaru's legs. It seemed to work, until the figure turned to mud. Another clone. The clones, now even more determined, pursued the real Orochimaru with renewed energy. Fueled by Naruko's sense of justice and focus, they pushed Orochimaru to his limits. Still, the Sannin eventually dispersed the last of them. Naruko, having dropped her weights and released a gravity seal, was now moving at much higher speeds, launching air slashes from nearly every direction. Orochimaru finally landed a hit, sending her crashing into the ground. At that moment, Naruko dispelled her meditating clones, absorbing their energy to recover. The light slowly returned to the forest. Feigning exhaustion, Naruko rested on her sword as if out of strength. She needed just a moment for her cosmic chakra to complete the healing process. Orochimaru, sensing an opportunity, launched his jutsu, extending his neck to try to place a mark on Naruko. But she blocked with her forearm. The mark appeared there, surrounded by 3 tomoe. But Orochimaru had overlooked one detail. Naruko had already created another wood clone underground, which now burst from below and delivered a powerful uppercut, followed by a heavy kick that sent him flying. The clone dispersed. Naruko retrieved her sword and, realizing she couldn't maintain the battle any longer, retreated into the woods. She had done more than survive, she had shown Orochimaru just how wrong he was to underestimate her. Watching her retreat, Orochimaru pulled himself up, a rare smile forming as he considered the incredible potential Naruko held. Dear family. That's all for now, thank you for being part of the journey. Stay connected, there's more to come. With heartfelt love and warm regards. 6 Path Weeb.